Hi, thank you for allowing me to get up so early in the morning and present today. The purpose of my presentation is talk a little bit about some of the new technology that is available to make it easier to support customers using digital presence. And today I'm going to talk about what digital presence is, what some of the technologies and tools are that enable you to have a digital presence, and show you some of the more powerful experiences that are available today. So let me tell you a little bit about myself. I'm the Senior Director of Spatial Computing. I work in the Silicon Valley, which is near San Francisco. And my focus is to look at how we can use 5G, edge computing, and AI technologies combined with lightweight wearable devices to make it possible for people to have a next generation experience. To sort of take people away from being distracted, heads down with a mobile phone in their hands, and bring them into a heads up society experience. A lot of people refer to me as the AR glasses guy because I've been involved in bringing AR glass products into Deutsche Telekom, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. So let's get started with a little overview about what are these terms: AR, VR, MR. So first, let's talk about virtual reality or VR. So virtual reality is where we use the computer to create a completely artificial environment for the user. So everything that the user sees while wearing the glasses is completely artificial. Now, there's been some blending of this, which we'll talk about with some of the newer devices, so that you can actually sometimes see parts of the real world. But for the most part, the idea of virtual reality is that you're elsewhere in a completely fake place. Then we have augmented reality. So augmented reality is where we utilize um, the real world. We let you see the real world, but then we overlay that with digital content or virtual objects. And so that way we can take a look at what we're doing in the real world, but we can also have information displayed in front of our eyes that might help us with the objects that we see, navigating to different places, interacting with pieces of equipment, that sort of thing. And then we have mixed reality. So mixed reality is where we take virtual objects and allow them to interact with the real world. That means that we actually have to use the camera on the devices to understand where the walls, the floors, where objects are, where people are, and what they are, and then allow the rendering of the virtual objects to be placed in accordance with the positioning of the real world objects. Also, we now know that we can, now knowing where the real world is, we can start to make the real world interactive. And so, for example, if you were to reach out and touch a tabletop, we could actually display some virtual object content right there because we know where you touched and where to place that virtual content. So mixed reality is kind of a blending of the real world and the digital world in a much more intelligent way. Now, as I mentioned earlier, some devices like the Oculus Quest will allow you to temporarily see the real world while you're wearing the virtual reality glasses. And this is often so you can find the controllers or just as a safety feature so you know where the real world objects like your couch, your chair, or your beer might be while you're interacting with the virtual content. Okay, so next let's talk about avatars. And actually, to facilitate this conversation, I'm going to be turning myself into an avatar in just a few moments. So, the idea and the importance of avatars is to allow us to create a representation of ourselves that is digital, that we can present to other people. And through the quality or the characteristics of that representation, that avatar, we can create an emotional connection with other people. And we're going to see some different qualities of how avatars can do that as the realism of the avatar increases. So let's start by taking a look at cartoon style avatars. So cartoon style avatars are typically avatars that you build using existing templates in a piece of software. So you don't have to be a designer. Your actual look isn't necessarily automatically utilized. You have to manually go in and pick, what gender, what skin color, what facial features you want to have, all of those things. And in a lot of cases, people like to, especially younger people, like to lean in and utilize fantasy type characters. So they'll look like a robot or a dog or something completely not human. And so that's totally fine. That's very common in a lot of social media platforms. We see this as even just as a 2D image. We see this in the form of stickers that we have in text messages. Our profiles throughout different social media platforms utilize an avatar of a sorts. And then, of course, with things like animojis on iOS, we can animate that. So that allows us to have a little bit more realistic experience. But it's still not very highly realistic. So let's take a look at the next level of that. And that's what we call semi-realistic avatars. So here what we do is we actually take an image of ourselves using typically a smartphone, and then we allow that smartphone application to compute the nearest match of a avatar character, and then we can enhance that character, we can modify it, but we use ourselves as the baseline for our digital presence. And so let's take a look for a moment here at how this is done. I'm going to switch to a piece of software that will allow me to present myself to you in the form of an avatar in just a moment here. Okay, so here now I am representing to you as a digital avatar. I can also change the background here, so let's go ahead and pick an appropriate background for my presentation today. And so now I'm speaking to you with the camera that's on my device being used to track my facial features, and I can be very expressive and I can move in and out and give you a sense of who I am, but with a digital representation. Now this is a pretty powerful piece of software, Loom AI, but what's really neat about it is that I don't even need to use camera, so I can actually turn the camera off. And now what's going to happen is it's going to use the voice the speech that I make, and place that animation of that automatically. So I'm not actually even looking at my computer right now. I'm looking over to the right or to the left, but you can see that my eye contact and my gestures and so forth are automated. And I can even, laugh, and my character will laugh because it will automatically pick up certain aspects. And so this is a really powerful sort of variation of the theme. Let me go back to turning the camera on so that I can actually position my avatar appropriately. And we'll go ahead and use this format for the rest of the presentation. So for moving on from semi-realistic avatars, and actually, here's a little demonstration of some other variations based on famous people. And then we have photorealistic avatars. So you can see if you compare the cartoonish, semi-realistic quality of the one that I'm using now to the next phase of realism for avatars, which is highly photorealistic. We can utilize this to create a tremendously high resolution realistic avatar that looks and really in every way feels like a human being. I have a video which I'll show you, which will give you a sense of what this is like. Moving on. So let's talk about XR glasses. As I mentioned, I'm sort of the glasses guy. So if we look at how systems have migrated, compute systems have evolved from mainframe computers down to the equivalent of more than a mainframe computer in our hand and a smartphone. Entertainment systems have migrated also, similarly going from theaters to home television and into smaller and smaller form factors, where now we watch videos a lot on our smartphones. And then of course telecommunications, going from public phone to the home dial-up phone, all the way to very small cellular phones. And so these are all kind of converging together, and the future is to bring this to augmented reality or virtual reality, mostly augmented reality, we believe, and replacing the smartphone with a heads-up display. So now your hands can be free while you interact with other people and the real world using the latest of the mixed reality technologies that I mentioned earlier. So one of the things that's really powerful about this is it enables what we call spatial computing. And spatial computing is the idea that we really lean into the concepts of mixed reality, and we turn our real world space completely into an interaction space. So we basically replace, there's no more monitor, maybe not even a keyboard or a mouse. Our hands become input devices, our speech becomes an input device, where we look, it drives input, how we turn our head, move our body. So our physicality actually defines a lot of the interaction. And then based on where we put our hands and where we move and the real world objects that we interact with as we do that, we can start to treat that as an input process, compute some information and display that. And even the display can be intelligently positioned so it's against the wall, or in front of you on the desk, or floating above your coffee cup. So it's really completely flexible. And the idea that we're really leaning into here is that if we can take people, bring their digital presence into XR, we can allow them to collaborate with each other remotely. And so this is where 5G becomes very important, because the 5G connectivity and other benefits enables the user to have this sort of really highly connected interaction experience, where we need all of the power of the compute on the network, we need the power of the bandwidth, we need the low latency connection, we need all aspects of the benefits of 5G in order to give the user the best possible experience. Now, if we take this a step further, we're actually looking at how we can enable people to transition from having a smartphone experience where they're looking down at a two-dimensional screen and interacting with applications to much more of a spatial context, where instead of the applications being positioned just in one vertical display, we might have application icons positioned relative to our desk, to the wall next to us, and then actual applications can all run simultaneously, and each one has its own positioning as a window spatially presented, so that we can have multiple displays of multiple applications simultaneously. And so this gives you an example. We'll show you a video where we can create a deeper level of immersion using Spatial, which is a software product that we're beginning to set up for use internally as well as reselling internationally. And Spatial allows us to have a much more significant experience where we are collaborating with other people. We're bringing different kinds of content together and interacting with that in ways that haven't been possible before. So let's take a look at a video of that. And finally, just want to point out that the technology that I'm showing you is all available today, and we can use this to make the job of supporting customers more fun by reducing the stress, not requiring that you actually stare at the camera all the time, but still maintain eye contact through your avatar. So it doesn't fatigue you as much. You're just using your voice as the input mechanism, and everything else is done for you automatically. And then we can also, of course, leverage our technology infrastructure to give the users the best possible version of that experience. So that's pretty much it for my presentation. I'll take questions.